My 18th birthday came with a huge surprise from the new neighbor, Gaylove. It was supposed to be just another birthday. Nothing special, nothing extravagant. I didn't even plan a real celebration. But that afternoon changed everything. The new neighbor, the one everyone kept talking about but I'd never officially met, showed up at my door with something that completely turned my world upside down. What started as a simple knock led to an unforgettable moment and a gift I wasn't prepared for, one that wasn't wrapped in paper but came straight from his heart. And believe me, it wasn't what you'd expect. Stay with me, because what happened that day still makes my heart race whenever I remember it. And who knows? Maybe this is the kind of story that will remind you how life can surprise us when we least expect it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss how this story unfolds. The knock that changed everything. I wasn't really in the mood for my birthday this year. 18 felt like just a number, not some big milestone everyone made it out to be. My mom had to work late, my best friends were busy with their own lives, and honestly, I thought I'd spend the whole day in my room scrolling through my phone like any other Saturday. But around 4 p.m., when the sun was starting to settle low, casting a warm golden hue through my bedroom blinds, I heard a knock on the front door. At first, I thought maybe it was a delivery by mistake. Maybe some neighbor ordered takeout and the driver got the wrong house. But then I heard it again, firmer this time. Curious, I pulled on a plain t-shirt and headed for the door. When I opened it, I froze. Standing there was him, the new neighbor I'd only seen from a distance while taking out the trash or jogging around the block. He was older, probably late 20s or early 30s, tall with broad shoulders and that effortlessly cool look. His name? I didn't even know. But at that moment he stood there holding a small box, a soft smile on his face that made me forget how to breathe properly. "Hey," he said, his voice smooth but relaxed. "You're Caleb, right?" I nodded, completely caught off guard. Yeah, that's me." He shifted his weight slightly, looking at me with eyes that seemed to see right through all the awkwardness I was trying to hide. "I'm Owen," he continued. "I just moved in a couple of houses down. I heard... Well, today's your birthday, isn't it?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, it is, but, I wasn't really doing anything for it." He lifted the box between us. "Consider this a welcome to adulthood gift. And maybe a neighborly hello." I hesitated. "You didn't have to." He tilted his head, that smile growing a little. "Come on, it's nothing big. But trust me, you'll like it." I took the box, our fingers brushing just slightly as I did. That simple touch sent a strange warmth through my chest, and I quickly stepped back, embarrassed by how flustered I felt. "Thanks," I mumbled, barely able to hold his gaze. "Open it," he encouraged, his eyes watching me closely. With slightly trembling fingers, I lifted the lid right there on the porch. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, beautiful, rustic, and expensive looking. The kind of thing you'd buy for someone thoughtful, someone you believed had a story to tell. I looked up, confused. It's beautiful, but..." Owen crossed his arms and leaned casually against the doorframe. "I noticed you always sit outside with that worn-out journal. Thought maybe it was time for a fresh start. 18's a big year, right? Time to start writing a new chapter." My throat tightened. No one had ever really paid attention to things like that, certainly not enough to turn it into a gift. Wow, I don't even know what to say. He smiled again, softer this time. "You don't have to say anything, Caleb. Just make sure you fill it with stories that matter." With that, he turned to leave, his steps slow as he walked down the porch steps. I stood there, frozen, watching him head down the street toward his house. Before he disappeared out of sight, he glanced back over his shoulder and called out, "Happy birthday, Caleb!" The door felt heavier when I closed it behind me. I pressed my back against it, my heart racing wildly in my chest. Who was this man? And why did it feel like he had just given me something far more valuable than a simple birthday gift? I opened the notebook again, and that's when I noticed it. A small note tucked between the first pages. With shaky hands, I pulled it out. "If you're ever looking for company, my door's always open. Owen." I swallowed hard, 100 thoughts spinning through my mind. And just like that, my quiet, forgettable birthday had become the day everything changed. The note stayed tucked inside that leather notebook, and no matter how many times I opened it, reread it, and told myself it didn't mean anything, it still felt like it did. I spent the next 2 days replaying every second of that brief conversation with Owen. His voice, the way he stood there so relaxed while I stumbled over my words, and that final glance over his shoulder before he walked away. It all played on repeat in my head like some movie I couldn't turn off. By the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of curiosity was unbearable, and besides, his note practically invited me. It was late afternoon when I finally worked up the nerve. The sun was low, that perfect golden hour lighting the street in a soft glow. My palms were sweaty as I walked the short distance to his house. I stood in front of his door for a solid minute before I could actually bring myself to knock. And then, nothing. No footsteps. No sound. Just as I was about to give up and turn back, the door creaked open. Owen stood there, wearing a loose gray hoodie and jeans, his bare feet peeking out from under the frayed cuffs. His hair was a little messy, like he'd been napping or maybe lost in thought. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he leaned casually against the doorframe again, just like he did the day we met, and a slow smile formed across his face. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, his eyes locked on mine. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked embarrassingly. "Yeah. Well, I didn't want to intrude." "You're not." His expression softened. "Come in." I stepped inside cautiously, taking in the space around me. His house smelled faintly of cedarwood and something sweet, maybe vanilla or cinnamon. It was cozy, minimalist, but with little signs of personality everywhere. A stack of old vinyl records sat next to a worn leather armchair. Books lined the shelves along the wall, and a guitar rested casually against the corner. "You play?" I asked, nodding toward the guitar. He shrugged, closing the door behind me. "Sometimes, mostly when I can't sleep." There was a pause. That kind of pause where you both feel something hanging in the air, but neither of you knows how to name it. "You want something to drink?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Sure." My voice sounded too eager, but at that point I'd already given up trying to hide my nerves. He moved to the kitchen, and I stood there like a guest who didn't know where to sit or how to act. "You can sit, you know," he called out from the kitchen. "Make yourself at home." I sat carefully on the edge of the couch, glancing around again. Everything felt warm, safe, like a place you'd go to escape from the rest of the world. He returned with 2 glasses of iced tea and sat across from me, his leg casually bouncing as he watched me take a sip. "So," he started, his eyes never leaving mine. "Did you figure out what you want to write in that notebook yet?" That question hit harder than I expected. I looked down, fidgeting with the glass in my hands. I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "Feels like whatever I write in there should be important, you know? And I don't exactly have a life full of stories worth writing down." Owen leaned back, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. You're 18, Caleb. You're just getting started. Who says you have to wait for some grand story to happen? Sometimes the best ones are the small moments, the ones that sneak up on you when you're not even looking for them. I swallowed hard, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. The way he spoke, like he already knew something about life I hadn't figured out yet, made my heart race for reasons I didn't fully understand. And then it happened. He reached across the coffee table, his fingers brushing over mine as he took the glass from my hand. His touch was light, almost hesitant, but it sent a jolt through me like static electricity. The air between us felt heavier, warmer. His eyes searched mine for a moment, as if he was trying to read something I wasn't even sure I knew how to say. "Don't overthink it," he said quietly. "Sometimes, you just have to let things happen." And in that moment, I couldn't tell if he was still talking about the notebook, or something entirely different. The next few days after that visit felt like I was walking around in a constant state of confusion. My mind kept going back to that moment, his fingers grazing mine, his voice so close and low that it echoed in my chest long after I'd left his house. I couldn't tell if he was just being kind, or if there was something more behind those glances, those casual touches that felt anything but accidental. By Friday evening, I couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. I had to know. That night, there was a neighborhood gathering at the park a few blocks away. Just something small, with music playing from someone's Bluetooth speaker and a few picnic tables covered in snacks. I didn't even want to go, but as I passed by the entrance to the park, I spotted him. Owen. He was leaning against a tree, just beyond the soft glow of the streetlights, a plastic cup in his hand, watching the small crowd. He hadn't noticed me yet. I should have kept walking. That's what I told myself. But my feet had other plans. I walked over slowly, my heart thudding so loud in my ears it drowned out the music. "Didn't think I'd see you here," I said, trying to sound casual as I stopped in front of him. He turned toward me, his lips curving into that same familiar knowing smile. "And miss a chance to see you outside of your room? No way." I couldn't help but chuckle, even as my nerves tried to convince me to turn and run. He took a sip from his drink and studied me for a moment. "You're thinking way too hard again, Caleb," he said, his eyes glinting under the faint light. "You've got that look." "What look?" He stepped closer, just a little, but enough to make the space between us feel unbearably small. "The look like you're stuck in your head, wondering 1,000 things but too scared to ask any of them." I swallowed hard, his presence doing that thing to me again, making the world feel smaller, quieter. "And what if I am?" I managed to ask, my voice barely more than a breath. His lips lifted into a slow, teasing grin. "Then maybe you should stop wondering and start finding out." Before I could even process what he meant, someone from the crowd stumbled toward us, laughing loudly and spilling their drink near our feet. It snapped me right out of whatever moment we were having. Owen chuckled and shook his head, stepping back. "See, the universe loves its little interruptions," he joked. But there was something in his eyes that didn't match the humor in his voice. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. Do you want to get out of here?" I asked, surprising even myself with the words. His brows lifted slightly, but he didn't hesitate. "Lead the way." We ended up back at his place. I sat on the couch again, but this time it felt different, like the air was heavier with all the unspoken things hanging between us. He sat across from me, leaning forward with his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze locked onto mine. "You came here for something tonight, Caleb," he said softly. "What is it?" I felt the flush rise in my cheeks, my fingers fidgeting nervously in my lap. "I don't know," I admitted honestly.
I feel like I'm always waiting for something to happen. And when I'm around you, it feels like maybe it already is. The room went silent, except for the quiet hum of the air conditioner. Owen stood then, walking slowly toward me. My heart pounded louder with every step he took. He knelt down in front of me, his face just inches from mine, his eyes searching for any sign that I wasn't ready for what might come next. And then, his hand reached out, gently cupping the side of my face. His thumb brushed my cheek, a touch so soft it made me shiver. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered. "Not here. Not with me." And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I wasn't.
I don't know how long we stayed like that. Him kneeling in front of me, his hand warm against my face, our breaths mingling in that impossibly small space between us. My thoughts were a mess, tangled and loud, yet everything outside of that moment felt like it had gone completely still. And then, his thumb brushed slowly across my cheek again, and my eyes fluttered closed. "Caleb." His voice was so low it barely reached me, but it echoed through every part of me. When I opened my eyes, I saw something in his expression that made my heart thud painfully in my chest. Hesitation. Not uncertainty about what he wanted, but a careful restraint, like he was waiting for me to say it was okay. And I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But before I could find the courage to speak, his phone vibrated on the coffee table, loud against the silence. The moment shattered. He stood up slowly, his hand falling away from my skin like it physically hurt him to let go. I sat there frozen, watching him glance at the screen before sighing heavily. "Work," he muttered under his breath, rubbing the back of his neck. I swallowed hard, my heart still pounding from the closeness, from everything that almost happened. "I should probably head home," I mumbled, standing quickly before I lost all composure. He turned to face me, his brows drawing together. "Caleb, wait." But I was already moving toward the door, every nerve in my body on fire. My thoughts were racing too fast to make sense of anything, and I wasn't sure if staying would make things clearer or just harder. At the door, I turned the knob but paused, not looking back. "Thank you," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. "For everything. For tonight." He crossed the room in a few quick steps, stopping just behind me. I could feel his presence at my back like gravity pulling me closer. "You're not running away, are you?" His words were soft, but there was a weight behind them. I let out a shaky breath. I'm not sure I'm ready to figure this all out in one night." His voice was closer when he spoke again. "That's okay. I'm not going anywhere, Caleb. Take your time." I turned the doorknob and stepped out into the cool night air, feeling like I'd just walked away from something I'd been waiting my whole life to find, but was too afraid to fully embrace. The following day was torture. I kept going over everything in my mind, wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed just 5 more minutes. If I'd turned around. If I'd leaned in instead of pulling away. But the universe wasn't about to let me sit comfortably in my confusion. That evening, as I walked down to the corner store for some air, and to get away from my thoughts, I saw him again. Owen. He was sitting on the hood of his car outside his house, staring up at the sky, a cigarette between his fingers that burned slowly in the dim light. I froze mid-step, unsure if I should keep walking or go over and say something. Before I could decide, he looked over and saw me. A slow, almost sad smile appeared on his lips, and he raised his hand in a lazy wave. "Out for a walk?" he called across the street. I swallowed the lump in my throat and crossed over to him before I could change my mind. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. "Yeah," he said, exhaling slowly. "Me neither." For a while, we didn't say anything. We just sat there side by side, staring at the night sky like we were both looking for answers in the same patch of stars. And then, without looking at me, he broke the silence. "Caleb, if I'm being honest, I've been trying not to cross a line with you." I turned toward him, my heart beating painfully against my ribs. "A line?" I asked quietly. He glanced at me then, his eyes full of something I hadn't quite seen before. Vulnerability. "Yeah," he said with a slow breath. "But every time I see you, every time you look at me like you don't even realize how much space you take up in my head, it gets harder to pretend I don't feel something." His words hung between us, heavier than the humid night air. And for the first time since I met him, I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel scared. I just felt ready. That night under the stars felt different from everything that came before. The air around us was dense with tension, but it wasn't the same uncertainty that had followed me for weeks. This was something clearer, like both of us had finally admitted, without saying it out loud, that we'd been circling something inevitable. Owen flicked the cigarette away, watching the glowing ember fade into the dark. His hands rested on his knees, his fingers laced together as he stared straight ahead. "I didn't mean to make things complicated for you," he said softly. "You're young, figuring yourself out, and I don't want to be the reason you rush into anything you're not ready for." I turned toward him, my voice shaking but determined. "I'm not some lost kid, Owen. I might not have everything figured out, but what I feel when I'm around you, that's real, and I'm tired of pretending it's not." He finally looked at me, his eyes searching mine in the dim glow of the streetlights. "You're sure about that?" he asked quietly. I nodded, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "I'm sure about you." For a long second, he just sat there, like he was trying to decide if he should believe me or protect me from myself. And then, without warning, he slid off the hood of the car and stepped closer. His hand reached up, fingers brushing my jaw with that same careful touch that had haunted me since the night in his living room. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do this," he whispered. Before I could even breathe a response, his lips found mine. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was slow, careful, like he was pouring every unsaid word, every hesitation, every quiet moment between us into that one kiss. And when I kissed him back, I felt something break open inside me. All the confusion, all the fear, gone. We pulled apart, but only just enough to breathe. His forehead rested against mine, and I could feel his breath warm against my lips. "This is going to change everything," he murmured. "Good," I whispered back. "I'm ready for it too." He smiled, his fingers tracing gently down my cheek before he stepped back. "Come on," he said, grabbing my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Let's get out of the street before someone decides to write a neighborhood blog post about us." I laughed, my chest feeling lighter than it had in weeks. Back at his house, things didn't spiral out of control like I half expected. He made us coffee, and we sat on the floor of his living room, legs stretched out, shoulders occasionally brushing. We talked, really talked, about everything. He told me how he'd moved here for a fresh start after a tough breakup that left him questioning if he'd ever really find something real. And I told him how I'd spent the last year trapped between who I thought I was supposed to be and who I actually wanted to become. "It's funny," he said, his voice low as he stared into his coffee mug. "I thought I was done with this kind of thing. Feelings, messy beginnings. But then you show up on your front porch, looking like the whole world had just caught you off guard, and somehow I started hoping again." I reached over without thinking, my fingers lacing through his. "You don't have to hope anymore, Owen. I'm right here." He squeezed my hand gently,
his thumb brushing over my knuckles. And in that quiet, I realized something. This wasn't some impulsive crush. It wasn't about my birthday or the thrill of attention from someone older. This was real. And as terrifying as that realization was, it also felt like the most honest thing I'd ever known. The next morning, sunlight poured through Owen's living room window, casting soft golden light across the floor. I woke up there, my head resting on his shoulder, his arm still wrapped around me like even in sleep. He wasn't willing to let go. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up anxious or unsure. I felt calm, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. He stirred and blinked his eyes open, looking down at me with a soft smile. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough from sleep. "Morning," I replied, smiling back. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew this wasn't the end of something confusing. This was the start of something real. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to see where it would lead.